great and talented panelists for today's webinar on cybersecurity. Just as a little note, we Latino Leaders publish a section about cybersecurity in our February-March edition, and most of the leaders that we have today with us participated in that edition. So this is a conversation that is going to add a very interesting new point of view, because we're doing this conversation after COVID times, and most of the interviews for our edition were pre-COVID times. So that's I think that's one of the factors that we want to introduce today as a novel or a novel point or a new point. So let me welcome very quick Betty Cardiel, who is Vice President of Digitized Governance for the US and Canada from Softtek. Let me welcome Alberto Yepez, Managing Director at ForgePoint Capital. Let me welcome Andres Ruzo, who is President and CEO of LinkAmerica. Let me also welcome Yonesy Nunez, Senior Vice President and Group Information Security for Wells Fargo. Welcome. Tony Lauro, Director of Security, Technology, and Strategy for Akamai. Paula, Senior Vice President, Information Protection, Technology, and Data Testing Validation for Wells Fargo as well. And Rafael Ortiz, who is Cybersecurity Specialist and Researcher at Telefonica Business Solutions. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. And I want to thank also Telefonica, this great company, for supporting this panel and this effort that Latino Leaders is doing today with all of you. So quick, just asking you to be as brief as you can so we can have a lot of interaction. A panel with many people always makes very challenging in making everybody talk and give their impressions. But we will start. Let me start with Andres Ruzo. And the reason that I would like to start with Andres is because Andres acted as a very well advisor for our special edition. So when we were starting in researching who will be those experts and who will be included in this edition, Andres gave us a very good, guidance on what kind of experts and areas we should include. So Andres, I would like to start with you asking, could you give us a little bit of a panorama diagnostic on how do you see the situation on cybersecurity, especially for medium size and small companies, which are probably the most vulnerable for this problem these days?
Well, thank you, Jorge. An honor to be with all these distinguished colleagues. And first, let me start by saying that we at the World Economic Forum, we talk about the VUCA world, right? Highly volatile, highly uncertain, highly complex, and highly ambiguous world. This was before the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, the number of aggressive cyber threats have been steadily growing, particularly in the COVID-19 crisis. At the World Economic Forum, we identified the #1 cyber attack as a more concerning technological risk that we have in this decade. And truly, with the exponential growth on data, with the exponential growth of video, it has also, the hackers have been having a lot of fun in terms of getting into the markets, right? Just to give you an idea, the MS team, the Microsoft team, we have 2.7 billion minutes a day of data going through Microsoft. So this exponential data surcharge that is happening now is really putting cybersecurity in front and center. The FBI is receiving about 3 million complaints a day in cybersecurity. So how do we bring this to small, medium businesses, which is our focus of LinkAmerica? What can we do to really help these companies? Because 1 in 3 Americans is going to be hit with either ransomware or some kind of malware or phishing or many things that are happening today. And the real truth is that we have to weave cybersecurity through the business, and it has to be an enterprise-wide collaboration. Similar to the pandemic, that each of us has to take it personally, that we have to protect ourselves and wear the mask and do the things that are, with the right procedures. Cybersecurity has to be internalized enterprise-wide in collaboration so that we can manage it effectively. It's not an IT task. It's an enterprise-wide issue that demands attention and collaboration from teams across the organization. And what is interesting is that, now we have to put remote workers at the center of the strategy because it's changing completely. I was with a group of 10 CEOs last week in California, talking in a Zoom in California. And some of them were saying, we're going to change, remote work is a reality. We're going to drop 50% brick and mortar in a year. So we are going to even offer some of my developers a job in Montana where they can go move to their parents' house and cut 30,000, 40,000 of their salary, and they get a better quality of life. So the new normal is changing. Remote has to be the center of the strategy as the pandemic has erupted. It has really catalyzed the decade that was a digital transformation decade into a faster pace because it's changing how we work, how we live, how we play, how we move. And coupled with that, and I'm gonna let my colleagues talk, it's an immense challenge, but cybersecurity has to be front and center, and it has to be seen like you see legal, or like you see quality, or like you see any kind of effort within your company to keep your business going. Cybersecurity has to be top and front and center.
Now, when I talked to all of you for the edition, we discussed the two sides or two main sides for the cybersecurity risk. One that is directed to companies, in which many of you work, like big banks or like big companies that have a lot of information from their customers, that any problem can compromise millions of names and can be really, really risky and dramatic. But also, we talked about the personal level. I mean, we discussed the fact that today is more dangerous that someone can, hack into your iPhone than hack into your home because of the relevance of the information that they can steal from you. So let me go now to Betty. Betty, you've been working for quite some time in these with companies. How do you see the panorama today?
Yeah, thank you, Jorge, and thank you everyone it's an honor for me to be with all these talented professionals, really, and thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Jorge, for everything that you are doing for the Latino business community. I think we need this time to collaborate. It's time to really evangelize not only in security, but also in the way that we as Latinos can collaborate in this special time. So that's what we're doing. We have been helping our clients in different ways by responding or assisting in all the disaster recovery and continuity plans, because those were in papers before, and now they had to react and to work towards the needs. Particularly those essential. We have clients that are in the essential business, but we call it COVID essential, like the hospitals, the banks, the retailers, and they were not ready. One particular case, we have clients in the education. As a mom, as a working mother, I had the same issues that a lot of you had, probably, by keeping our children ready to work with this new or old computer that probably was not ready. The antivirus was not updated. the device that probably my iPhone is the one that I use to with my child, with a lot of information that probably he shouldn't look at it. As you know, and we were talking about, I have this nonprofit organization to help parents, to help teachers on that matter. And exponentially saying that the FBI that Andres, the reports that the FBI are getting in this community, we are getting probably in cyberbullying like the 300% of reports right now, cyberbullying or identity theft, all this personal information that is being exposed of people that were in the business, now of our children, which is also a risk. And what we're doing, how we're prepared. And that's exactly in a different scale what happened to the businesses. I mean, they were not ready, as Andres was saying, probably to move everybody to their houses. In Softtek, the company I work for, we were running like 800 BCPs to keep all those businesses, first of all, to keep our people safe, because that's our priority. We are a Latin America company providing services mainly to US and some other countries, but mainly to US. And those companies rely in our services. So we needed to address those requirements, but that was the type of issues that we are getting is in the privacy. For example, in the healthcare industry, some of our healthcare companies are addressing new requirements that probably they had HIPAA, but was not ready to address some of the privacy or regulatory controls that in somehow is imposed. In Mexico, we have another regulation, very strict, but we have a different situation. So it has been a combination of fighting and moving ahead to provide a service and see how we can make some exceptions around to handle that. But the risk is that the number of incidents that we are receiving right now is exponentially growing, and we have to tackle. The way that we are doing right now is with automation. There is no other way to do it by using artificial intelligence, because Andres was saying that the hackers, the attackers, they are always waiting for big events to happen. And this is like a field trip for them. The criminals are there, different agendas that they are bringing to the table. Finally, this recreation part is here. So that's what is happening, and how the scope of this uncertainty is. No?
Okay, thank you, Betty.
No,
now, I would like to now go to Alberto to ask you from your standpoint, because you have a very unique standpoint in which you invest in companies, and you've been working in this area for many years. But your company and your investment firm is actually and actively looking for opportunities, business opportunities in this field. So you must have a very interesting view from all the different options and all the different forms of cybersecurity defense or cybersecurity work to be done in this area. Alberto, please.
Yeah, Jorge, thank you very much for what you do for the Latino community. I want to second what was said already. To be quick and to give others the opportunity to speak. So at Fourth Point, we're a venture capital firm that we invest in early stage cybersecurity companies. We have raised a total of $750 million, all dedicated to investing in cybersecurity companies. We have a total of 21 active portfolio companies. We invest in a total of 24. And we cover the full gamut, not only on, how do you prevent ransomware, to email phishing security, to cyber insurance, which we haven't talked about it, and also the realm that is emerging as a parallel universe, which is cyber intelligence. And cyber intelligence is not about devices and IP addresses and applications. It's about people, brands, individuals, and every time we interact in our phones or computers, we leave a digital footprint. And that is being tracked, whether we like it or not. And it's a way to identify, what we do, and cyber criminals leave a lot of crumbs. And, there's a way to get them back by by investing in proactively in terms of what is the potential threat to your business. So I would say my opinion right now is based on what we're seeing right now and working with 21 active portfolio companies. Our lives are becoming increasingly digital. We saw this in the pandemic. The pandemic really accelerated digital transformation, not only in banks, like Yonesy works at a very large bank, but a very comparable bank like them accelerated their whole digital transformation program because they needed to secure the identities of their customers. And they went from experimenting with 5-10 million users to 30-60 million and about to do 100 million users in a better way of authenticating, continuous monitoring the way they interact with the bank. That's an example where this would have taken us 3-4 years to evolve. In large banks where they're trying to prevent fraud and make it convenient for people to do business with, even the people cannot go to the branches, are trying to make it more, secure to be able to do that. And the other extreme is, who has done really well during the pandemic? I know everybody talks about restaurants in the food industry, but come on, Chipotle, businesses that we know they're doing really, really well is because they had a digital strategy. They invested a long time ago. The reason why Amazon is where it is and Apple is where it is because they invested a long time on being digital transformation companies. So I would say our lives are becoming increasingly digital. Digital transformation is a fact of the matter, and businesses that don't transform, they're gonna, And finally, the threat is real in a lot of nation states, and people are trying to attack us. So I think the matter is that we need to be judicious in the way we invest, and like Andres said, it needs to be part of everything we do. And a lot of it is because digital transformation is here, and because of the pandemic, we're seeing just the beginnings of the impact of cyber attacks. But I think what people are doing are harvesting credentials. They're not performing the attacks. The amateurs are doing the little ransomware, give me $50,000 and I get away. The more sophisticated ones are harvesting your credentials so that they can perpetrate more, bigger damage in businesses. So that's a little bit of what we're seeing. Real digital transformation is a fact, and cybersecurity is gone from being important to becoming critical.
Now, let's go, since you mentioned Yonesy and Wells Fargo, and also Daniel is working for that bank as well. And we know that of course, bank breach security is one of the most common maybe crimes. I want to say, I'm not an expert on these. You will correct me if I'm wrong. But what else? So for example, I can imagine how vulnerable can be a financial institution when you have a lot of information that can compromise, clients and users and payees and people that make just business and in business interactions. So Yonesy, could you explain to us what is the platforms that you are using in Wells Fargo and in the bank to and what are the dangers that you are seeing now outside?
Well, thank you again for having me today, and to the rest of the panelists. Appreciate being here with all of you. First and foremost, congratulations and claps to everyone for subsisting and living in the pandemic. Obviously, everyone had to utilize their business continuity plans, and we seem to be operating in the new normal, as Andres mentioned earlier today. So from my viewpoint, the attacks has always been around a monetary gain. So attackers are out there looking to gain money through activities like Alberto mentioned around ransomware, harvesting credentials, etc. So one of the new paradigms that the new normal brings to our environment is that the threat surface is increasing. And that's true for everyone that's working remotely today, where now their environments, their networks, their data is being extended to the endpoint at their homes or other places where they connect remotely to their environment. So we're seeing a shift from the attacker insights and the techniques and protocols around targeting remote access. So that's an area that we need to continue to be vigilant about, and how we are allowing that access, authenticating users, and things of that nature are going to be key and important. In as much as the tactics utilized today by the attackers, they seem to be the same. So I'm not going to quote numbers specifically, but one of the reports that I look at perennially is the data breach incident report from Verizon. And one of the things you'd see there is that when they look at over 3,900 different breaches in 2019, what you're seeing is that the same techniques, the same tools are being utilized by the attackers. So another nugget of information that Alberto talked about was the digital transformation. A lot of companies today that are suffering from breaches, that are suffering from attacks, really have a lot of technology debt, because attackers continue to get through with the same old attacks, whether it's phishing, whether it's malware, et cetera. They're utilizing the same technique. So when I look at the numbers for those 3,900 sub breaches in 2019, about 22% happened because of phishing. So that tells me it's a twofold approach. We need to continue to transform our environments digitally, create more automation, leverage intelligence as you see fit for your environment, create rules, but truly, and again, to my peers that came before me, I think Alberto and Andres did a really good job talking about intelligence. How do you get the business involved? What I'm saying is attackers are really focusing on the business process rather than the tool, rather than the user, right? It's putting how does a business process work? And we're seeing that in a way that they're subverting controls, because you may not be able to directly circumvent a specific control, but if you understand the business process throughout its life cycle, there are kinks in the armor where the attackers are able to circumvent. And that, to me, is where we should be focusing on as an industry, on how to protect the business process through cyber and information security. Thanks, Jorge.
No, thank you, Yonesy. And I just want to go very, very quick, just skip Tony, but since Dan is also working in the same company, my question, or what is the same question, Dan, but from what Yonesy was saying, are the criminals becoming more intelligent than the protectors of the information, or is it a never-ending career? How do you see things from your side?
Yeah, well, thanks, George, and all the fellow panelists for the opportunity today. It's really exciting to be here, and thank you, George, for everything you do to support the community and the group. The way I see it, the cybersecurity threat landscape, it continues to evolve, right? The industry that we are in, financial services, continues to be the most frequently targeted one from a cybersecurity standpoint. If you look at the breaches, the motivation, if you study how cyber criminals have operated in the past, they are operating in the present, and how they're evolving, you're gonna look at that. And you're gonna see that those malicious actors, they're getting more sophisticated, right? And impacting more people and more clients. The attacks, they are no longer sporadic. They're now automated, they're ongoing. They're targeting business processes, as Yonesy said, not the tool set anymore. And the same machine learning, artificial intelligence technology that's available to the business, it's also available to the hackers. So you're dealing with a lot more sophistication. In my experience, it is now more than ever crucial that all organizations, being in financial services or not, small, large, gigantic, doesn't matter what size, to stay vigilant and stand up strong cybersecurity defenses that match the scale and the complexity of the challenges and the cyber threats that you're dealing with. When I look at the environment, there's 3 or 4 major cybersecurity risks that I see in the environment today, and my colleagues kind of touched on some of them. Ransomware is one, which is, we saw a little bit of an increase in the industry during COVID-19 in terms of volume and frequency, which is not a surprise. Phishing is another one. You know, it is one of the main attack factors today is phishing, you know, where employees are falling victims to those emails and clicking on URLs that's causing malware to be deployed, creating backdoors and opportunities for exfiltration of confidential information. And then so ransomware one, phishing another one, and then the increased adoption of cloud solutions, you know, with the environment moving to the cloud, applications, infrastructure, more and more organizations are moving to the cloud or being cloud first, right? You hear that term a lot. But in many cases, the skills to fully understand and implement the proper security controls, settings, it's not there yet, it's still being built, right? So which could result in data breaches, and that basically due to human error or engineering errors as you set up those environments that are still unknown or people are learning. The folks, you know, touched a little bit earlier about the new normal and the COVID-19 impact. The way I look at it, Jorge, is the new normal, the so-called new normal, right? What's doing it, it's accelerating the need for more digitization, right? Which drives the need for more and better cybersecurity controls. During COVID-19, you know, we're seeing 2 or 3 years worth of development happening in 2 months, right? That's exponentially faster than we've seen before. And it's true, of course, that some of these mega trends, they were there before, right? Agile, open banking, fintech, AI, all of that was there before. But what COVID-19 did and continues to do is to accelerate a lot of digitization initiatives in many organizations that then drive the need for better cybersecurity controls.
Yeah.
I tell people, you know, we went from just a few months ago from bring your own device and work from home to bring your own network and work from anywhere. It's expanding exponentially. The notion of network perimeter, it's gone. Every company is remote now. We are pretty much in a completely decentralized environment. So a lot has changed. The environment has changed. The user has changed. We used to have terms, you know, insider and outsider, right? When referring to malicious actors. Well, guess what? Every insider now is outside, right? It's working from home, but it's an insider with knowledge of the organization. So
yeah,
definitely a lot of change, and the threats continue to evolve, but it makes it, in my opinion, it makes it really more exciting to be in cybersecurity right now. That's driving a lot more demand and importance. Someone said earlier today, you know, cybersecurity went from being important to being critical. And I agree with that. I couldn't agree more with that.
Now, going to Tony and to the opportunity to explain his point of view on how risky the situation, on how has it become worse. But also, I want to put there the topic for everybody after this is when is it different to have criminals that are asking for ransom? I hijack your information and I will make you harm if you don't give me money. But how about the other type of criminal that is, you know, trying to hack into perhaps security agencies or voter registrations for making voter fraud, or the other kinds that are not necessarily involving a ransom and a financial ransom. So Tony, let's go ahead with your point of view on the topic, and maybe you can talk about some of the issues that we've been discussing.
Yes, thank you. And Jorge, thank you for everything Latino Leaders does for the community. We appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, you know, just kind of listening to everyone's responses, one thing that's pretty clear is that as attackers evolve how they attack us, it definitely is following the money, right? There's always some kind of financial aspect to be gained, whether it's an extortion email that says, hey, I'm going to take your website offline if you don't pay us, 3,000 Bitcoin. Or if it's ransomware, something that's encrypting your data and then asking you to pay money to have it decrypted. In both of those scenarios, and I think it was Andreas that said this earlier, that's kind of like a real high level, top level, easy thing to do, right? The real criminals that we really need to be worried about are the ones who are in the network right now. They're not saying anything. They're not exposing themselves. They're exfiltrating data. They're working with other criminal elements to coordinate data. And to Danielle's point about the attackers kind of creating their own economy, right? As they step up and they have to become more advanced to bypass our advanced controls, we see that there's a bigger and bigger ecosystem of attackers talking to each other, working with each other, sharing toolkits, developing specific toolkits to attack specific customers. Like there's tools that are for credential abuse against one particular company. And then there's other tools for credential abuse that are kind of, for everyone. But the other point, and I think Yonesy mentioned this, was that, as attackers kind of, again, are evolving, they're taking what we do in terms of, automation and this digital transformation, and they're working along those same processes as well. So we see a massive uptick in attackers attacking API endpoints, because typically you kind of see those as, hey, this is machine-to-machine communication or client application to machine communication. And without inspecting those and looking into those requests, it could fly under the radar that those are being tampered with by the attacker. So, over the past 7 years at Akamai, I've been working with customers in North America and South America, and they definitely are following a trend. During the 2014 FIFA World Cup, when there was a day of games against one country and another, we saw digital attacks on the internet from one country to another and vice versa. And we see that the same during the Super Bowl and during the Olympics, the opening day of games at the Olympics, and other country to country lineups. There's cyber activity that follows that. So it only makes sense that as COVID-19 is now this kind of top of mind subject, that creates a pretext, right? Which is, for an attacker, that is this is an indication for me that you're going to know what I'm talking about, right? And that increases the likelihood of my attack working if I'm doing a malware, click on this, or a phishing campaign. So the attackers are definitely following that. And, what we try to do is try to build defenses that are really changing the architecture of an environment. For instance, we sit in front of, major banks and major websites and downloads, streaming services, etc. So we see a whole bunch of stuff that's happening on the internet, and we use that intelligence to try to figure out, okay, how can we apply what we know about this attacker or this IP address or this request string? How do we apply that across all of our different stacks that we have to apply mitigation where it makes sense? And the only way to defeat the attackers in the long term is to create a defensive posture that is in a layered defense. It's really the only way. All right.
Now, let's go to Rafael. Rafael, thank you again for accepting participate in this webinar. How do you see, going back to what you see at Telefonica? We understand Telefonica is a large company for communications, and data is maybe more valuable now than sometimes money or some other currencies, right, out there. And you are a big transporter of information. So how do you see things? What's your panorama diagnostic, and what are the biggest risks that you see out there?
Okay. So first, thank you, Jorge, for putting this together.
Sure.
It's actually kind of a passionate area of mine to bring more diversity to the cybersecurity space. And working for Telefonica, our entire operations team is obviously full of Latinos, but when I go to meet with partners or customers, it's very rare to find one of us there. So I think things like this are important for the development of the community. To go to the question, so yes, at Telefonica, since this whole pandemic started, we've seen significant increases in bandwidth utilization as people shift from working in offices to working from home. And what that's caused is a shift in sort of new basics of cybersecurity from their typical on-premise cybersecurity to focus on denial of service for the connection to the data center, remote access, endpoint security. Those are the three main ones that we see. Interestingly, though, we don't see an increase. How do I say this? We're not seeing a huge increase in attacks that are targeting these new basics, although they are becoming more critical because of the risk of their impact. What we're seeing the most is an increase in the sophistication and quantity of phishing attacks, business email compromise, attackers that are trying to slowly navigate through organizations, taking advantage of the fact that people are disconnected. So more so than targeting the VPN connection or targeting the link to the data center, while that is become more critical and our customers are focusing on defending those links more, we're seeing the attackers are focusing more on the disconnected individual. So how can we address that? So what Telefonica has been doing is trying to help people remain connected to each other and to their business more through collaboration software, through managed services, through programs that we're starting to roll out in areas where we have presence, where we extend the business network into the home. So we want to make sure that that working environment is as close as possible to the working environment that they had when everyone was working in an office.
Right. Now, I'm just going to start launching now questions, and maybe if you're interested in responding or answering that one, we can take some of those. But I'm concerned about the small and medium-sized company, or maybe I am also concerned for the personal user of technology, because big companies, I know, they have their own departments, and they can hire the most sophisticated cybersecurity companies to work with them. And I'm not saying that it's an easy or a cheap, effort, but at least they have the resources to kind of have their own army of elements, of tools to defend themselves. But sometimes small and medium-sized companies and individuals, we don't have that kind of options or tools. So what needs to be done there? I don't know who wants to.
The biggest issue you just brought up is the fact that one of the big macro issues in our industry is the lack of qualified cybersecurity professionals. Exactly. The very few that exist go to the big companies, to your point. Some of them that get the mission are in the government. But the small, medium business, the small enterprise, the cities, come on, they're being targeted for harassment work. So the whole industry is migrating. Somebody said the migration to the cloud, digital transformation, is moving to a managed service. Before, 5 years ago, nobody wanted to outsource the management of security. The only way small businesses are going to be able to get the best security, they have an advantage because they don't have anything, so they don't have legacy. So give them as a positive and an advantage. But now they need to go after a trusted advisor, maybe regional, maybe Telefonica, or somebody like AT&T, or a VAR, a small VAR, or a regional player in Dominican Republic they're going to be the ones delivering the value. They're going to be aggregating those products. But those products hopefully are going to be cloud native. So in order to deal with email phishing, instead of trying to put an old Microsoft server and all that, I'm going to be using things that are available to the cloud. And as a value-added provider, I'm not only going to help manage the infrastructure, but I'm going to be able to control the whole environment. So the migration to managed security is inevitable, and it's the only way we're going to be able to do that. And somebody asked a very interesting question about, so what about a zero trust environment? What about working from home? Assume the device is compromised, assume the network is compromised. So zero trust is all about at the application level. People talk even about API being targeted. You have to be able to monitor it and be able to go an end-to-end zero trust model that really allows the interaction at the application level to all the way to the back end and the data being encrypted and everything else. So the day, and I know today we're saying, hey, let's do VPN, let's put a firewall, let's put every single, so it's a layer approach, I get it. But you have the luxury, just go all the way to the application. Today we use a banking application. We don't care if we use VPN or not. We use Salesforce. We don't care. We use Amazon. We don't care. It's end-to-end. There's a zero trust model, and we're going to have to migrate. But that's thanks to the migration to the cloud and the evolution of technology. But again, small businesses are going to get the best security available to them without legacy from managed security service provider because of the lack of cybersecurity professionals.
Yeah,
And let me jump in there, Jorge, because you know, part of LinkAmerica's strength is SMBs, and we were discussing that with you. We just launched our first SD SOC, software-defined SOC, Security Operations Center in Bogota, Colombia. We have been running a NOC in Costa Rica for the last 10 years with AT&T, and we see that as a huge problem, right? Because you need competent people that are watching your candy shop every day, every instant, 24/7, so that you can identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover if you are attacked prior to. Some of the challenges that I see is that some of these hackers can stay 6 months to be detected, and then it's too late. I mean, ransomware is a big problem, but they are becoming more sophisticated, like some of our colleagues said. And in reality, it's not if, but rather when you're going to be attacked. All of us are vulnerable. It's going to happen. 1 in 3 Americans get attacked. We, with LinkAmerica, are working with SMBs to protect from the device. We're doing middleware software. We're working with OEMs to try to collaborate with them so that we can defend proactively our customers. And Telefonica is a business partner of us. We do a lot of work with them.
Yeah, can I jump in? I had a company, information security company in Mexico with a different situation. I founded this. Unfortunately, I didn't know about Alberto yet, so we had to close. We came to Softtek. But the situation is very different in development countries. I mean, they have businesses, they have to run the business. That's the most important matter for them. And information security is far away of thinking in an investment, in an investment point of view, number one. Number two, we have to go back to the basics. I mean, just today or yesterday, one of the most important government in Mexico sites had a defacement that you as an expert, you may know that is a easy way to hack. Why? Because going back to the basics, there is still a lot of requirements to make or reinforce awareness in those businesses. Together with the Latin positive culture that we think that thing or that event is not going to happen. That is not like in COVID, no? I always make an analogy even to these teachers is we always think that this is not going to happen to me with that positive mindset, and we don't take any precaution. I mean, I can tell you, when we had this company, and even in this company that I'm right now, we have been improving using security awareness, which is back to the basics again, procedure. improving the risk and decreasing the risk in 50–60% because of that phishing is very successful because of the lack of knowledge or because they are taking advantage of this fear that we have. The fraud, I mean, the fraud right now is very successful. They are making like 28 million. I was just reading the news, just with sending you an email that is fake and you are trapping that in that email. So just going back to the basics, I agree with what Andres is saying. We need to partner with those big companies that can help these small businesses. And believe me, I do this a lot with those companies that are more Latin companies that are created by entrepreneurs that are women. We're working with some of them, and they are facing the challenges. They are trying to survive with their business. That last thing that they are thinking is insecurity. So we need to advise them with something that is going back to the basics, and that works. And I will support to use and I'll always provide this advice of use the most common tools that can help them. No, I will bring that. I would like to bring that to the table. The other topic just before leaving this is what Rafael was saying. I mean, the talent gap is there. We know that it is there. We don't have a lot of specialists. We are, of course, suffering because of that. And this is evolving. So we need to prepare. We need to put in our mindset that we need to prepare our people, even internally, not just look for people outside of the company. We need to prepare people for this. No, that would be it.
If I can jump in,
Sure.
I would like to emphasize the idea that's been mentioned of trusted advisors when it comes to cybersecurity. Managed service providers, a lot of them are doing kind of the bare minimum and have gotten away with doing the bare minimum with security for a long time. And for a small business without a lot of cybersecurity knowledge, it can be hard to differentiate between an MSP that knows what they're talking about and an MSP that just claims to be doing a good job in security. And especially now with this pandemic, I have a story of a pandemic-related threat. A MSP employee who, when working from home, realized that he could get away with remotely accessing some of his customers, went onto the dark web, started selling access to those customers for $400 a pop. The only reason this guy was caught is because other MSP people working on threat intelligence teams went out of their way to fight back against this guy, collect evidence, and hand him over to law enforcement. They tried to go to law enforcement before. Law enforcement said, that sounds terrible, but for $400 each, there's not much we can do. The business community was entirely on their own, and it was reliant on the work of cybersecurity professionals being proactive to defend this MSP's customers. So really having someone who can trust, or who you can trust, that can vet the quality of the team that's handling your security is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we have like a lot of small criminals, I mean, the amount just by adding them. Is there someone else that want to have something to say on these?
I do, Jorge.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I was in Buenos Aires last year talking to a big e-retailer, and their biggest problem at the time was credential abuse, right? Credential stuffing, tools written to bypass their bot mitigation tools, or their bot mitigation controls, etc. And as time has evolved, I think in October of last year, the NSA had released, their cybersecurity team had released 6 CVEs, vulnerabilities that were released against very popular VPN services, right? So hardware, software, device combos, etc. And that was before the pandemic. These problems existed. So, Alberto was mentioning zero trust, and just the concept of, it's pretty clear that if I send all of us panelists an email that says, hey, your Amazon delivery has been delayed, how many people would probably click on that, right? Because if you're ordering from Amazon all the time, you're more likely to click. So the user education piece is absolutely vital to be able to inform them of the risks. But I think we need to go even a step further. And this is a process that security groups have been doing over the years. And Yonesy mentioned this is, attackers are following our business process. So security teams need to stop being kind of these high-level police of yes or no, architecture reviews, yes and no, which is important. But start following the business process. How does the company make money? And then do threat modeling on that process. How, as an attacker, am I going to interject myself into that business process, bypass some of those control points that you have, and then exploit the user. So with that being said, what we've seen now is that attackers are shifting away a little bit from attacking the end user, the client, and they're going to the corporate end user, the employee, right? So different phishing attacks could very easily, right? Because there's a gray area. You're at home, you're on your laptop, it's 10 o'clock at night, you check email, and then someone sends you something on Facebook, you open it up, right? So we're becoming a little bit more lax with how we use these devices as we roam in and out of these different personas at home, or maybe kids get on the computers, etc. If we can create an architecture that extracts the main problem set from these vulnerabilities and provides, some other kind of control, that would be ideal. So for VPN, attackers always say, okay, if I compromise this, take the big box manufacturer that had a target on their back, so to speak. They had an HVAC vendor that had a VPN connection into their network. And the attacker said, I'm going to attack the HVAC vendor because I can come over that VPN connection. And because of the way VPN works, I now have access to the rest of their network. Sure, there was other problems that their POS system was not separated from this other network segment, etc. But attackers are doing the same thing. So if you look at a zero trust architecture for remote access in particular, you can say, okay, I'm going to provide an external user the ability to connect to an internal trusted application by taking away the network access and just giving them a virtualized application experience. That model actually follows the least privileged security principle, which is you should only have enough access to do what you need to do your job and no more. So if you could abstract and take away that network layer access, now VPN becomes not as important in terms of for an attacker to exploit. So changing the architecture to protect the users when they do mess up, I think is the ultimate end goal, above and beyond just education.
Now, I want to spend the few minutes that we have left before going to maybe a couple of questions that we might have on the diversity side of. I mean, all of you are Latinos working in this field. The tech field is usually understood to be dominated by certain other minorities, like the people from India and the Middle East and even the Far East. But how do you see in your own perspective niches? Because you work, some of you work in big corporations, and as you were saying, Rafael was saying, sometimes that you don't see in companies, a lot of diversity. Some of you have your own companies. Some of you work in medium-sized corporations. How do you see these industry in terms of diversity, and what would you suggest to do in order to invite more people, maybe more young Latinos to join this industry or to become experts on this area? I don't know if someone wants to go ahead and be the first to make a comment on these.
Well, let me take it a crack. So, diversity makes the representation of different worldviews and experience easier. The good news, we've talked about a lot of issues, but the good news is that by 2021, there's going to be 3.5 million jobs for cybersecurity opened, right? Opened. So with us, we have engaged in education in LinkAmerica here. We have cut a contract with PTEC, which is part of the Dallas Independent School District, and the DCCD to start providing cybersecurity classes at 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. They are what they call baccalaureate. So they can graduate from high school and get 2 years of university already at 18, which is amazing. But they don't have cybersecurity. So we are before pandemia, we were working very diligently to start doing classes in a public-private partnership with these two institutions to try to bring minority business, educate them, train them, and certify them, especially on certifications, right? And that includes critical thinking and some of the other main things, because coming from diverse background is critical because you have different approach to things.
Yeah.
We are doing that effort. Education is the future. And the good news is this industry is just going to grow. And we need to keep those jobs in the US, not let them go to China or to India or to other places.
Anyone else wants to contribute on these? Yeah, go ahead, Betty.
Very quick, and we need more Latinos. I'm passionate of this. We need more Latinos in IT, absolutely. As Andres was saying, the open positions are there. Like 19 years ago in Mexico, we were able to put together and beginning since high school with a group of high schoolers learning cybersecurity, IT and cybersecurity, and then in the university. We were very successful, but it was not enough. And you made a question, a very interesting question, Jorge, in regards to the agenda that the attackers can bring besides the financial. They are very diverse. I mean, if we think in Anonymous, which is the group that probably everybody knows, or if they don't, just Google it. Anonymous is a very diverse group. I have seen people from Argentina. I used to be a hacker like 20 years ago, is how I started on this. And believe it or not, they have different agendas in their cultural mindset. If we don't have that diversity to respond to that, we are not following or understanding really their behaviors, and that's where we need to think. And so that's what one of the agendas that we are bringing right now in women's insecurity as a mothers, educating not only in IT, inviting our young children to study IT, but also cybersecurity. So yeah, there's a need. We are very, very few. I mean, Latinos in IT is less than 7%, and in cybersecurity, we are like 3%. So it's very, very low, the number. And if you come to US, as we did as an IT service provider like 20 years ago, when we let the US businesses know that we were from Mexico, they don't know. Even right now, they don't know that Mexico or Latin American company can provide IT services to the US.
Yeah, you should go to groups like ICMCP. If people don't know what it is, Yonesy is a member, is the International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals. It's not just the education, the mentorship, but large companies like Cisco, big corporations trying to build the pipeline for cybersecurity professionals. This is very specific to cybersecurity. Highly encourage African Americans, women, veterans, everything else. The other one is high tech. You know, we've been working really hard on developing multiple programs, and more we're realizing that people within high tech have dedicated themselves not only to technology, but the emerging technologies and digital transformation. In cybersecurity is something that has evolved, and the mentorship is super important. Let's not forget our veterans, because they have the mission, and for them the mission continues.
Now, just before we close, Alberto, do you have any initiatives in investing in schools or education for preparing technicians in cybersecurity, or do you think that would be an interesting investment?
I think we support a lot of you need to get leverage. So investing in one school is not going to get it. It's the industry needs to. It's not only education, the large corporations, you educate somebody, no, they don't have a job, they don't have an internship, doesn't matter. Yeah. There's a lot of key initiatives being driven not only by the groups that I mentioned, but Trend Micro has an emerging program where they bring a bunch of, like 40 people in a cohort, and out of the 40, 20 of them get jobs in Trend Micro, and 20 of them get into their channel. So we support and we work really closely with Trend Micro. But at the same time, Cisco is doing it. All the large companies are doing it. The investing itself is $1. It's interesting, but what's going to happen? At the end of the day, people want to study because they want to get a better job, and they want to get mentored, and they want to be able to grow. And I know that's what we all want to do, be able to figure out where we create those leverage points where not only dollars, but mentorship and critical mass for corporations giving jobs is going to be the solution to be able to do it.
Yeah. Now, before we also close, and I just want to bring the opportunity to all of you just to make a very, very brief closing remark. Do you know of any initiatives that are geared to our developing countries, businesses as far as cybersecurity? That's one of the questions that we have received.
So we're seeing a lot more activity out of the Organization of American States based out of Washington, D.C. to improve the cybersecurity posture of the entire region. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to talk about, but there are organizations that are trying to improve the cybersecurity of the region from the top down. When that's going to start trickling down to businesses, I'm not sure. On an individual business level, there are programs like InfraGard with the FBI where they can help you with threat sharing information. But there's also a ton of guidance that's being handed out by the US government, by the EU, and by regional governments throughout Latin America of steps that even SMBs can take to just generally improve their cybersecurity posture.
All right. Well, just for the respect of everybody's time, I just want to say thank you again to all of you. An hour has gone and has fly, like very fast. Does anyone wants to make any final remark, very brief, before closing? Okay.
I just wanted to say to the team, thank you, and thank you for all the attendees today. Information and cybersecurity is a mission where we all need to work together and collaborate, share information so we can all be better. Thanks again for your time.
Yeah,
thank you,
and I want to thank you, Jorge, because definitely with your magazine and the work that you guys are doing, you're collaborating and bringing together. When we bring together people like us, we exponentiate our culture, exponentiate our businesses, exponentiate collaboration. So keep doing this work, Jorge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andres, and thank you for collaborating. All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, anyone else?
Thank you, Jorge. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alberto, and we'll see you soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Gracias a todos.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you again, and have a great week.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jorge.